The arcane and esoteric revelations of St. John. And this is a special note to the non-Christian viewer of this video series. Whenever you hear the word Christ, you can replace it with the Messiah or messenger from your religious culture. They are all the same manifestation of the energy of Om that was fully awakened to enlightenment and attain Buddhahood by the soul, the oversoul of all creation. The totality of primary consciousness, which can be defined as real love energy in perpetual motion. Energy, as we know, has both voltage force and amperage oscillation, meaning its rates of speed and ways of moving are variable. This energy has three qualities that we as humans should see manifested as we reflect back the movements, speeds, etc. Real love energy in perpetual motion. We are the animated interfaces or the sensory organs of Om in the here and now of the earth and its solar system. This energy has three qualities. One, the first quality is conscious. That is to say, aware of itself in all aspects that we as humans commonly sense things. As souls experiencing life in human suits, we are awakening to a higher consciousness, or put another way, to the awareness of Om. The second quality is truthful. Energy that is in everything, everywhere, as the law that we are starting to understand as a cosmic or law of nature. Gravity is the best known, if not entirely understood by all. Om energy is balanced and constantly seeks rebalancing when askew. These laws are true, whether or not we are at the point of understanding them. Unconditional, and that energy is not tyrannical, patriarchal, dictatorial, nor in any way expitant. It is an energy that gives out and expands in the fluxional way, in the flux capacitor fashion. It operates via a reflection from within. Thus, the expression, God is within you, meaning God is here, being your soul itself, the spark of Om within. It seeks nothing but to really love as it expands, gnosis, and requites, or is requited in that love. Real love in perpetual motion, that, if absent in any given situation, is reflected as the simpler, baser bio-nature that makes up all cells at Genesis. The soul spirit can reason within karmic laws while the biocells live under purely cosmic law. Our DNA may contain our karmic past, but our soul, when awakened, can transcend it. That is what the true seekers of gnosis strive to find on their road to enlightenment. Please remember that all things exist in varying degrees. Here are a few issues to consider before undertaking and viewing these videos dealing with anthropological theology and mystical esotericism even. Evolution of words and things. Humans have known for aeons that there are multitudes of cultures and religions that pay homage and reverence to a multitude of deities. No one can negate the other one, yet we can study their history to discover their origins and their place in contemporary life. Much of what we in the West know of them has come from Eastern cultures. And for anyone, East or West, to say his or her God is this or that compared to others is simply delusionally thinking. Their own levels of narcissism, which are worse than viral pandemics, have outstripped their rationale for what our Creator is and how the cosmic laws that we know of balance themselves in movement. Anyone who has read, listened to intensely, or studied the old verses of the New Testament will realize that the God portrayed there is simply not someone any sentient being would want to have as the creator. Simply put, he is maniacal. I think we've discussed that in videos past, of this maniacal Anunnaki negative ET Yahweh. The description of the God in the Old Testament that is given of him is definitely in line with the descriptions that come from ancient times of the dark side of Saturn. This side, the mystics called Chavojob. The light side they termed Jehovah. Then again, in the Old Testament, there are occasions when he is asked his name and he replies, "You do not know me as Jehovah." A neat slip of the tongue, or was it Freudian? In any case, rest assured, the God in the Old Testament was not, is not, and never will be our creator, because evil or lack of love is not everywhere in all things. Okay, sorry, Christians, just grow up, or grow in, actually, and expand. As we mentioned previously, we will use the word Om to describe neurolinguistically that which is the totality or any of the names that you feel relaxed in using to describe the one that is the one creator energy, the prime director, the divine grid programmer. So Om is the sound of creation. That is what Om is referring to, the divine grid programmer, the prime creator. Words are one of the challenges with which we are all born. Perhaps one day we will all hum and be better understood. Although many would have us believe, as they play on the names being used, that this one is Greek while another is Egyptian. Therefore, one came before the other. Such is not the case. For just as the indigenous peoples of South America have ancient similarities with those in other parts of the world and vice versa, all come from the same root. Similarly, the present myriad of cultures and religions all have the same root that predate the Old Testament and even the oldest Vedic writings, the ancient writings of ancient India. Atlantis, here we are at the heart of the matter. The continent of millions of souls existed before Plato wrote of the island remnant in his time. It dates back some 400,000 years ago. And while no physical artifacts are known, just as no one saw a soul, does not mean it did not exist. It has simply yet to receive the stamp of approval from material scientists. In the meantime, those that study spirituality know what they know and live in that knowledge, not as smarter beings than others, but as enlightened ones that share the real love Om has for us all, the prime creator, the divine grid programmer. So please do remember that the word Lord is not Om, that God is not Om, nor any combination thereof. Om is Om. Om is supposed to be where the heart is. And the others are manifestations of that part of Om that has been used to describe that deity, be it a Lord or a God or an angel. Just as we all have a soul within us that is, in fact, a spark of Om, so also do each of these deities manifest a particular part of Om. In the case of angels, these messengers have been described for aeons, yet as science has yet to weigh or measure them, they are not allowed to exist in the physical realm where we, as souls, are experiencing life in human suits. Angels are the consciousness essence of the deity to whom they report. Report, yes, for all things are organized, and in various ways, hierarchical, least chaos ensued. The transmission of this consciousness is much like we know as telepathy. in that it is messages trying to get us to help us be all that we can. And yes, just as each positive energy pattern of a planet has an angel, so will its negative or dark side have one. It is not malicious, but given our own duality and lack of understanding, these paradoxes of life, we see them as such. Our own inner egos seek to have and to live in paradise right here and now, without actually experiencing or experimenting living life as we are, known as living in the now, thus awakening the soul within to the enlightenment of life of Om as real love. Something to contemplate is that intelligence is defined as the manner in which we use our capabilities to face our challenges. This all comes through awakening to enlightenment. So we must listen, not to our outer egos, but the inner messenger. We must ensure that we understand the true messengers, for there are, in fact, counterfeit spirits about, namely egos. Understanding this will help us better grasp karma and past lives while living as sentient beings in this life. Let us discuss the ego, the virtues, and the superego and the id. As stated previously, we all carry the egos within us that we have created over lifetimes of experience and experiment while living as a soul in a rented human suit. Yes, let's thank Inky from the corporation Nibiru for designing these human suits. Thank you very much. Please install the rest of the software. Please expand. I want my full 12 strands of DNA. The egos are to our biology what our virtues are to our spirituality. Thus, the question becomes, are we choosing to live a more innate, defaulted process of animalism, or to face the challenge consciously and live as a soul spark of Om on earth, doing the best we can, consciously as a sentient being? In the picture of who we are, we must consider the wall of the superego police person and our soul id that sits behind it, seeking its collapse. The wall was constructed over many previous lives, but mostly in the years of this present one, and as a block to being all that we can. The wall is where all the various allegories originate that we see in so many of our sacred writings, where messages have always been passed down from generation to generation in an open yet tacit manner for the true seekers of gnosis to find. The egos themselves are perpetuated similarly, but affect us only when we stop or ignore our search for the gnosis of life. Let's talk about the multi-universe and multi-dimensions and our various levels of being. On the metaphysical side of the sacred elements with which we work, we come to understand that there is more than just this dimension to the multiverse. Therefore, when we read any passage, it can be more often than not reflective of or addressed to our other levels of being. This means that in the writings considered prophetic, there are various parts of us that will understand the messages at a deeper yet complementary level. So what we may understand in the simplistic physical sense with our brain-mind makeup, it can and does come to be understood at our spiritual or soul-spirit construct. One does not take away from the other, but in fact enhances our understanding as we consider the dualities and paradoxes of our lives. Thus, as we read about things that are to come, we can begin to see how on a geophysical level, there are some astronomical changes that will take place. At our soul's level, there are some very much enlightened aspects we tap into that are precipitated by the astronomical forces through these geophysical changes. We are starting to understand the cosmic dance as it relates to our being in the here and now. These same aspects also occur at other levels and within other dimensions or realms that we have yet to understand. Better said, to which we have yet to awaken. When someone becomes disdainful of these concepts, it is due to frustration with the present conditions of life on our planet and our loss of control of everyday situations. It is this loss that fuels the present narcissistic epidemic. Thus, when knowledge becomes power, it is in fact each and every one of us giving away our power for a few pieces of silver. Sounds familiar, doesn't it? As we work through the passages of sacred writings, now we're talking about numerological considerations, we come upon a fascinating variety of numbers, sometimes speaking to us and at other times befuddling. As most of us realize, numbers are paths that lead to understanding music, words, and yes, seemingly hidden meaning. Seemingly, since they were not set up as such, but to express concepts we need to understand from our spiritual side. Think of it as being as if we met another planetary being. Then how would we communicate? Numbers are the simplest means of expression as they relate to sound, and we will come to see the use of the number seven as the manner in which all things are organized in relationship to the seven planetary gods that govern our 7 days of the week, and so on. Then there is the infamous number 12, which we all understand as the 12 months of our year and the astronomical sense. Yet, did we know that it also relates to the 12 elders that set the patrons for our individual energy centers, our chakras? Yes, we did say 12 chakras that we suggest you investigate to better understand their significances. Suffice it to say, the number 12 becomes 24 lords in the revelations in reference to the duality that we as humans in this dimension understand as being good or bad or positive or negative, etc. These gods, lords, elders are perhaps the least understood and yet of the utmost importance to our daily living conditions. They are the ones in their planetary configurations that create and set the energy wave patterns emissions that we receive in our physical bodies. These ultimately mesh with our endocrine system to produce the hormones that keep us alive both physically and psychically. This aspect alone will help us better understand just how and why astrology actually works on all of us under the influences of our solar system. The angels are the consciousness aspects of either the planetary gods or the elders, and they help to check on things to see how they are functioning. All of these deities are interfaces of Om, just as we are the animated interfaces. More often than not, given our present personality's state, we seek to find solutions to all things from without ourselves, as we are all part of the totality of primary consciousness. It is to our advantage if we have a better understanding of what is going on inside. As we will come to see, John, the author of the book of Revelations, attained those levels of awakened enlightenment through consciousness of the gnosis of life. Jesus of Nazareth became Christ Jesus as he ascended to the regions of being that so very, very few had attained before and have reached since his own Christification. As the victors of war write the history, it suited them well to play out the process as most of us have come to know as Christianity, at least in the dead letter sense. If we are perceptive and care enough to understand the gnosis of it all, we will see what Christ was telling John is the process of ascension is the state of Christification. Yet, even here, we once again see what some of the details have been left out for various reasons. Those that care to really understand can further investigate Om in the quantum sense of the fluxion or the metaphysical sense of pistis sophia, and they will find clearly that a female human being must be in union or communion with the male in order for this to happen. This point of sexuality is the most sensitive. People talk of money easier than their sexual habit, hidden as the male dominance or hierarchy in humanity hates to place the female on an equal footing with the male. This is the pure animalism of our baser urges. and abused for control, which is literally the power over others, and starts at home and expands from there. Just think of all the temple prostitutes or nuns of immoral behavior, etc., etc. After the ascension process, Christ Jesus completely explained it all clearly to the disciples and left it for us to gnosis what it all really means. Sages understand the Nag Hammadi papers. Science does not. Let he who has ears hear means to understand what is being said, not just hearing the word. Christ would be the first male that any of us can think of in the West that would always place females on equal footing with males, even if all too many males and many females as well do not like to think so for many reasons. In his writing, John will indicate some of these points. Christ knew of Om as well as knowing all of the deities that make up and process the flows and ebbs of energy in our great multi-universe. Christ literally knew himself and knew the God, all being integral parts of the totality and thus of each other. None of this is magic, unless we define magic as things that are simply awaiting understanding. John will tell us that there are various astronomical situations that have occurred in the past, will happen again, and are part of our planetary configurations and movement. While we see them as allegories, not having studied astronomy or metaphysics, scholars that came before us, and some of today's have studied his words, they can explain how these various patterns will affect us. John does not reveal what will happen exactly, for at times he is being told not to write, nor to reveal certain things, lest they could also become information to be used in manipulation of the masses. Yet the patterns are all there, and it is up to each of us to either choose to understand and make a conscious effort to make a change or ignore them, as the masses have done for most of this present humanity's existence by living the consequences that evolution via unconsciousness brings. Poor old Saturn. Satan is quoted frequently in Revelation, and at other times the word devil is used, and occasionally we have Lucifer thrown in. To clarify, these are all different entities and thus of different energy emanation. The closest we have to Satan that explains some of the actions attributed to Satan is Saturn. The fact that Saturn is also known as the Lord of Karma helps us better to understand how some of the direct actions of Satan are really reflective of karma and in many cases of retribution. Saturn would necessarily be one of the more prominent lords or gods as karma affects the life of every living organism that has soul memorization, meaning that some living cells are purely biological and not spiritual in nature. The devil is a more apt word to use when trying to convey the lack of conscious, real love that our Creator Om demonstrates to us as we breathe and live life here and now. The devil that we can study to learn and understand is what Christ calls the counterfeit spirit that is part of each of us to some degree. It is the external manifestation of our own psychic aggregates, commonly known as ego. Lucifer, on the other hand, is an angel or deity of light manifestation. His job within us is to help us see our way or the error of our ways, which is quite often why he is considered our dark side, and help us continue on our path to Christification. For those interested, this is where the red Christ of which we have read or heard comes from. I never heard of the red Christ. Once again, it is words of which the majority of people do not have clear understanding or definition. So they default to what the consensus reality dictates, which of course is governed by the winners of the war and not those that seek to extol the truth. So the revelations here, the esoteric arcane essence of the revelations here in their biblical will be displayed or related in their metaphysical context. However, please realize that in the esoteric sense, We could and shall one day write it all to match the various levels of our inner being or soul. And this would take us through the 7 chakras or 7 levels of understanding. So we would be able to compare it to the 12 levels of the astrological situations or configuration. This last one being the more insightful, for it would lead us to the 13th eon of metaphysical studies, which would open the doors to the gnosis of life, the widest to all. Assuredly, there exists also an even more prophetic one that describes the 22 tarot arcanum, and finally, the entire 33 degrees of Masonic knowledge. I will confess that this writing, along with the Pistis Sophia, Christ's teachings to the apostles after the ascension, are 2 of the most intriguing that I have found. I would love to be able to work with kindred spirits in order to fully translate this piece with the gnosis that Christ extolled in the Pistis Sophia. It is not an easy undertaking, yet to attempt it is both very insightful and a labor of love. Ideally, an analysis of these writings is needed from a variety of perspectives, including dead letter word, or what is presumed to be the meaning, astronomical interpretations, cross-reference to metaphysical aspects, using metaphysical aspects, precepts that approach it all from quantum physics. Compare the cosmogenesis dating back 400,000 years to the repetitive nature of the geological upheavals that have so far been identified. Compare it all to the timing of the various electromagnetic changes that are known to have taken place over time, and we surmise that are presently occurring. Now, let's make a disclaimer. Given humanity's historical past concerning all things known as organized religion, it will not be surprising that we see a lot of metaphysical aspects pointing fingers at it. Rest assured, it is not the real love aspect that is behind any culture or religion that we are against, but rather its handling or the system itself, mostly patriarchal and narcissistic, i.e., negative ET factions, deep state, dark cabal, Illuminati. We are trying to bring all this to light for the masses in order that they can judge for themselves just how much skullduggery has gone on for as long as we can figure it out, as long as we have been here experiencing life in a human suit, courtesy of our Anunnaki creator on this level. And do what each one needs to do to be all that they can be. We will ultimately see whether we like and accept it or not, that the basis of the dominant religions, Judaic, Christian, Muslim, are built on false premise, which we invite you to discover for yourself. Perhaps some will tell me that God will come and strike me for this apparent blasphemy. But very often the appearance is deceiving. If God of the Old Testament is Om, then I, Mark Thomas McGuire, would rather end up in the lake of fire than live and support such demonic action. Booyah! We emulate the ones that we gnosis, that we know, and consider the ones we would emulate. I know Jehovah and Jehovah Just for whom they are, the killing until death and dead to remnants of our seed. God of the Old Testament is not the prime creator. The God of the Old Testament is not the divine grid programmer, is not source, is not Om. Be understood only by study and knowledge. So please hit that subscribe button, as that will be a further light for your soul to be a subscribed member of the Umbanda New Earth Education System of Data Dissemination. I don't like tyrannical, patriarchal, controlling systems. Okay? Let's get that straight. As much as I may have somewhat of a bias against females for acting as they do for so long as primary narcissistic feed supply to the males, I have more against the males for the baser animal instincts by which they live, unbridled narcissism, etc. Any organized religion, culture, or group that has dominance over others in its beliefs needs to rebuild the foundation of its fundamental beliefs before it utterly crumbles like the house built in sand.
Namaste. Namaskaram.
Stay tuned, folks. We're going to continue. This was just a little bit of a prepping the playing field. Getting the arcanum together, getting some of the esoteric, getting all that stuff lined up. So stay tuned, folks.
Namaste. Namaskaram.